Haspel, who was running the CIA at the time, said she would quit if he did that. Kash Patel has since written a book called, quote, Government Gangsters, which, as ABC News reports, calls for a, quote, comprehensive house cleaning at the Justice Department and an eradication of government tyranny within the FBI by firing the top ranks and prosecuting to the fullest extent of the law anyone who in any way abused their authority for political ends. And he has said this in the past.
The one thing we learned in the Trump administration the first go around is we got to put in all America patriots top to bottom. And we got them for law enforcement. We got them for intel collection. We got them for offensive operations. We got them for DOD, CIA, everywhere. And the one thing we will do that they never will do is we will follow the facts and the law and go to courts of law and correct these justices and lawyers who have been prosecuting these cases based on politics and actually issuing them as lawfare. We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. Yes, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you. Whether it's criminally or civilly, we'll figure that out. But yeah, we're putting you all on notice.
They're going to go get the people who lied about the results of the election. We hope he means in 2020 and incited people to commit crimes at the U.S. Capitol. We hope he does that. Anyone that lied about the results of the 2020 election and inspired their own people to carry out crimes and chant, "Hang Mike Pence," those people should meet the fate that Kash Patel describes there in that interview. Now, as concerning as Kash Patel's appointment was to Gina Haspel 4 years ago, and as concerning as the potential for that happening now is, there are more and different worries around what the intelligence community will look like under Donald Trump. NBC News is reporting on the mounting concerns that Trump will politicize and weaponize the U.S. spy agencies, claims he has made very publicly in the past. Quote, lawmakers, former intelligence officers, and Western officials worry that Trump and a group of loyalists could reshape the makeup and mission of the nation's intelligence apparatus. Officers could be pressured to skew their findings to suit the White House's political agenda. Allies might scale back information sharing due to Trump's cavalier approach to secrecy. And in a worst-case scenario, the spy agencies could be converted into tools of retribution against domestic political opponents, the former officers and others say. Meanwhile, the president-elect has been fielding calls from foreign leaders. The Washington Post is reporting that Trump spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday, their first call since Trump's win, according to what the Washington Post called, quote, several people familiar with the matter. Russia is denying that that call took place, and Trump's team tells NBC News this, quote, we do not comment on private calls between President Trump and other world leaders. So there's that. The New York Times is also reporting that South Korea is worried Trump and Kim Jong-un will soon be exchanging what Trump called love letters once again, a situation that could put the safety of our ally, South Korea, at risk. All of this is where we start the hour with former Chief of Staff at the CIA and at the Department of Defense. Our dear friend Jeremy Bash is here. Jeremy, where do you want to start? Should we start with Kash Patel and his future atop either the FBI or the CIA? What would you think?
Hey, Nicolle. So first, I want to start by saying, as you've said, today's Veterans Day, and today's a day when we honor the service and sacrifice of those who have served our nation in uniform. It's also a good moment to remember the people who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. And I say that, and I start there, because I want people to know that the people who wear the uniform of our country, the people who serve in our intelligence agencies, the people who are the career foreign service diplomats serving our departments and agencies, they're not part of any political party. They're not part of a regime. They don't have a loyalty oath to a person or to an agenda. They're not even part of a loyal opposition. They are completely nonpartisan, and that's the way we want it to be. And I think the only thing I would maybe label all of those people, and I put myself proudly in this camp, is we're institutionalists. We truly believe that the institutions of our government, when deployed and used in a nonpartisan, non-political way, serve the best interests of all Americans. And I actually think, Nicolle, as you were assessing at the top of this show, how the Senate will consider the nominations of certain national security professionals, I actually believe that there are a lot of Republican senators, and I put John Thune, John Cornyn, Mitch McConnell, incoming Senator Dave McCormick, in that institutional bucket as well. I believe that they will want to see people leading these departments and agencies who will speak truth to power, who will be faithful to the ideal of nonpartisanship. Yes, we need to have civilian control of the military. That's an important principle. We should unpack what that means in the context of a Trump administration. But I want people to know that the good people at CIA, the good people in the Director of National Intelligence, the good people at the Pentagon are not some deep state. They're not going to pursue some political agenda. They just don't have it in their DNA. They don't do it. And they're going to be really working for the interests of all Americans.
Jeremy, 8 years ago, I would have left it unremarked what you just said about Mitch McConnell and Mr. McCormick, and I don't know who else you lumped in there, John Thune. But I think we're too late into the Trump story to hope for people who know better to do better. I mean, the story we led with was about recess appointments because Donald Trump has such a massive political mandate going to Washington. He doesn't need them. So he's using them for a different reason. And I think we both know what the different reason is, right? I mean, are you really pinning the preservation of these institutions you and I both revere on Mitch McConnell and John Thune growing a spine?
Well, Nicolle, do we have a choice? I mean, that's the point, which is part of being institutionalist means you believe and subscribe to the view of separation of powers in our constitutional system. And you kind of hit this at the top of the show. We're going to be entering a period in which Donald Trump not only controls the entire executive branch, his party will control the Senate, probably the House, and a significant majority of the U.S. Supreme Court. So anybody who has taken civics understands that when you control all three branches of government with a political party, it's much more challenging to have checks and balances. And so as difficult as it is to contemplate this at this moment, Nicolle, I think we have to rely on Republicans, Republican elected officials, Supreme Court justices, and people inside government and outside government who are willing to continue to have checks and balances, to continue to hold the executive branch accountable. If there's an unlawful order given to the United States military, I expect, and I think it will be the case, that uniformed military will not carry out unlawful orders. If these people try to politicize the work of the Central Intelligence Agency, I know the people who work at the Central Intelligence Agency, they will not allow their work to be politicized. They will speak the truth, and the truth will set them free. That's emblazoned on the wall of the original headquarters building at Langley. There's a kind of a mode of operating, a view, a loyalty to the Constitution that honestly is bigger than any other idea of who's in power, who's your commander-in-chief, who's calling the shots in the executive branch. And I think we can have faith in people who believe in these institutions.
Let me show you what Trump said he would do to the military.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
So comments like that led to the extraordinary event of retired General John Kelly speaking out on record and on tape with his warnings. Again, I know that some of these folks in Trump's circle are smearing the media with calling Trump a fascist. It was actually General Milley who called him a, quote, fascist to the core, something that General Mattis corroborated and something that General Kelly then said on tape that was widely circulated. The idea that Trump will put the military onto U.S. soil in the functions that he's said out loud, to say nothing of what we don't know he may be planning. What does that actually look like when the military gets their orders from the White House, the commander-in-chief, through their civilian leadership to carry out what may be an illegal order?
Yeah, I think this was contemplated, actually, during the George Floyd riots when then President Trump wanted to use the military under some theory of using the Insurrection Act to quell First Amendment protected activity. And General Milley looked at the facts, looked at what was happening, and looked the president square in the eye and said, we're not doing that. And I believe that General C.Q. Brown, the current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the other members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the service chiefs from the Army, from the Navy, from the Marine Corps, from the Air Force, from the Space Force, will do the exact same thing. And I should also say that the leadership of the National Guard. And I've spoken in recent days to uniformed military personnel, both enlisted and young officers, all the way up to the general and flag officers, and they have no intent to follow any unlawful order to use the United States military against the American people. I just want to say, Nicolle, you referenced retired Marine General John Kelly, and I want to be especially sensitive today, of all days, about his patriotism and what he's given for the country. You know, first of all, today is Veterans Day. It's also the birthday of the Marine Corps, but it's also the anniversary of the death of his son, Robert Kelly, who was killed serving our country in uniform in Afghanistan. And over the weekend, as the Kelly family gathered at Robert's tombstone in Arlington National Cemetery, which is hallowed ground, not a place for photo ops, not a place for campaign events, which is what Donald Trump did during the campaign. You know, I think all Americans should be grateful to families like the Kellys and the countless other families out there who have given and paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom.
I think people are grateful to General Kelly, and I think that the fact that he spoke out should never be viewed through the lens of the campaign that was being waged. I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think that his speaking out was about the institution he reveres most, which isn't the White House, in which he served as the longest White House chief of staff. It is the military. And I just want to tick through, I mean, the members of national security agencies who spoke out against Donald Trump. It's not just Mattis, Kelly, and Milley. It's also Esper, who was the Secretary of Defense. Mike Pence didn't vote for Donald Trump. Cassidy Hutchinson and Sarah Matthews were West Wing staffers for Donald Trump. Eric Hirschman was a lawyer. Mr. Donahue worked at DOJ. John McGowan was the first White House counsel. Rex Tillerson called him an effing moron. Bob Corker was a Republican senator who tried to, for the first time in American history, rein in the nuclear powers of an American sitting president because he described the West Wing as, quote, daycare. Anthony Scaramouche. I mean, the list of people who've warned about Donald Trump's ambitions when it comes to U.S. national security are all former Trump national security officials. So what keeps you up at night?
Well, what keeps me up at night are some of the things that those officials talked about, but also something that I think H.R. McMaster, an Army general himself who served as National Security Advisor to President Trump, also wrote about in his recent book. And I have to just say, General McMaster did not come out there and write some screed against Donald Trump. He was pretty careful, pretty measured if you actually read the book. But one of the things he said is that there is a dynamic when Donald Trump gets on the phone or gets in the room with a dictator, with an autocrat, which is that autocrat knows exactly how to transact business with Donald Trump. He knows that they know that flattery works and that essentially you can get Donald Trump to fold and cave very easily on some highly consequential issues. Erdogan has done this. Xi Jinping has done this. Obviously, we know Vladimir Putin has done this. And, you know, Nicolle, you referenced at the top that as Donald Trump fields some of these congratulatory phone calls from world leaders, which, by the way, is appropriate to have those phone calls, we still have to adhere to the principle that we only have one president at a time. We are in a presidential transition. President Joe Biden is the president of the United States, and Donald Trump and his team should not be conducting foreign policy in this transition period. It's highly confusing to our adversaries. I think it sends a signal of undercutting what we're trying to do in the world. And I think the Trump team should just wait. They should field the congratulatory phone calls, say, thank you very much. I look forward to working with you. Things are going to be, you know, good between us, and I look forward to talking to you after January 20th, or some pleasantries. But we should not be having the incoming administration conducting